Today on the Truth Hour, President Trump holds his first cabinet meeting today. Open door with the media present for a majority of it. We'll discuss also the book Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff with inserts from Steve Bannon, the fallout from that. Also, Senator Dianne Feinstein releases the transcripts to the Fusion GPS investigation and discussions without other approval from other members. Also, the Obama administration running guns to Syria through Benghazi. What's up with that? Also, a bombshell report last night. Sarah Carter, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows also discuss possibilities of confirmation that the Trump dossier was in fact used for a FISA warrant to spy on President Trump. This and much more today on the Truth Hour.
Something really wrong is going on. What kind of show you guys put on? I want the truth.
Good morning, Truth Hour audience. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate your attendance this morning. You are on the Truth Hour radio program. My name is Shane Jameson, and welcome on this beautiful Thursday. I don't know where you're at in the country, but we're having a huge warm-up here in Pittsburgh. I think the polar ice caps came down over the plains and over the East Coast over the last couple of weeks and just stalled out. I meant, surprised we didn't see icebergs. But a lot of the rivers around had some pretty big chunks of ice. It was absolutely frigid. And driving in this morning for the Truth Hour, what a welcome surprise. About 50 degrees out. Unbelievable. Feels great. I mean, when you go from about -3 to +5 up to 50 in the course of about 24 to 36 hours, that's a good thing. All the snow's melting, a lot of the ice is starting to melt, so having a miniature warm-up here, I do believe the weather's going to set back in here in the next few days. Supposed to get some freezing precipitation and ice as well, so short-lived reprieve from the Arctic ice cap that has set in over Pittsburgh, but we will take it. So I hope you and yours are well this morning, and I appreciate you being here today. And if you are listening in, please chat us. Please chat me here so I can give you a shout-out, acknowledge that you are, in fact, here. And I do appreciate everybody being here this morning. So also a quick plug on our show. You can find us here naturally on YouTube, Truth Hour Radio. You can see all the last 3 to 4 months of shows. Also, we are, once again, I stream live every Thursday morning here at 11 a.m. Here in Pittsburgh. Also, you can also reach me on Gmail at truthourradio@gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments about the show or topic possibilities, I'd be glad to listen to those and incorporate that into our shows weekly, my show weekly. So we do appreciate you. So guys, we do have a jam-packed session, as we always do. This week is especially jam-packed. We have a lot of inserts and videos to show you this morning, and I am just itching to get started here. So we will dive right in. Front and center, it's kind of almost tapered off now. There's been some other stuff that's kind of taken the stage, but within the last few days, I'm sure you've heard, if you've kept up with the news, the book Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff with inserts and supposed quotes from Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon. Huge fallout from that. Guys, the first thing I saw, anytime something like this drops, you initially kind of cringe, right? If you're a Trump supporter, you kind of cringe. You look at this, you're like, uh-oh, what do they got on him now? What are they trying to prove? What are they trying to pull? You just feel, I just feel, this is my personal opinion, I just feel so bad anytime something, gets dropped on President Trump, because first and foremost, because everything that's been dropped on him has been proven false to the most part. And as a fan of President Trump and his agenda, I just want to see the guy succeed, and I just so much want, I don't know about you, but I would love to wake up one day, and I know this isn't going to happen, but I'd love to wake up one day after this country's been so divided, after this country's been, there's so much divisiveness out there, the left-leaning media, the mainstream media going to bat every single day. They get up with one mission, that's to discredit, dismantle, and demean this president and try to discredit him. I'd just love to get up one day and for everybody to just be singing Kumbaya, and it'd be and for somebody on the left to say something positive about President Trump, right? And good morning, Aaron. Thank you, sir, for being on. So I'm just sick of the divisiveness. And you get up, you know what it does? You get up in a defensive posture. I mean, I do. I mean, I'm not saying that politics controls my demeanor, but I am, I'm a based in politics. It's one of my passions, and so it's hard not to, it's hard to shun that and to, get up and not feel the darts that are being thrown at the administration. If you're one that's backing the administration, it's hard not to go to bat for them, and then to also feel the pressure when the left kicks back and pushes back with absolute, false accusations after false accusations. So, with that being said, this book came out, and if you all remember, Steve Bannon was let go a number of months ago, back in the summer, I believe. And he's been out there, kind of ranting and raving. He's declared that he is a Trump fan, and then he's still trying to help push Trump's agenda. He's still trying to declare that. But then how do you knowingly assert yourself in a book by an author that has been discredited many times, and it's questionable at best, inside what is basically no different, guys? I call this, the first time I saw this Fire and Fury book, the first thing that came to my mind was Dossier Number 2. You might be asking, what do you mean by that, Shane? Well, it's simple. Dossier Number 2 paralleling Dossier Number 1. What was Dossier Number 1? A bunch of fake hearsay that was dressed up into official documentation presented to a FISA court, ended up obtaining that coveted status of a warrant for the Dems. That's what they wanted, and they, that huge, and we'll get into that huge bottleneck for the powers that be that actually went to bat against this administration, the Trump administration, during the Obama administration, through the FBI and other intelligence agencies. The ones that wanted something to derail the Trump administration, they saw this effort, right? They saw this coming to a bottleneck, and the bottleneck was the FISA courts. You can put together whatever you want. You can put together and find and put into official documentation. You can find all this investigative material that you want. But if you're in game, and that's what the Democrats and certain factions of the DNC wanted under the Obama administration, if you're in game, your end goal is to have an investigation against your opponent, which that's what they wanted, which is just sickening. Then the bottleneck in this whole process, and they knew they had to get through this process, and that is the bottleneck of the FISA courts. So in other words, you can bring all the hearsay and all the official-looking documentation you want. You have to present that in front of a FISA court. The FISA court has to then issue a warrant. If they wouldn't have been issued a warrant, this is 99.99% flat on its face, dead before it ever gets started. So you have, I've always been through this. You talk about the genesis and the core of this investigation, guys. It started there. It started well before there, but they knew that their number one hurdle and goal, their Mount Everest, was getting it through the FISA courts. And if they could achieve that goal, they basically had invented a self-perpetuating throw the mud up against the wall and keep rinsing it off as fast as you can, but there's always going to be the possibility or the, we got to let that investigation play out. We have to have this, we have to let the guys, the powers that be, finish the investigation. We have to let Mueller finish his investigation. They can always then, once they've gotten it through the FISA courts, they have an investigative tool to then spy on the Trump campaign and members of the Trump campaign. This is basically Pandora's box that's been opened. And it's absolutely scary, guys. So that's really been the bread and butter of this show for a couple, 3 months, really. I mean, trying to bring the relevance to what's actually being uncovered and the truth that's being shed on this fake dossier. So Fire and Fury is really no different. I mean, you have a discredited author that doesn't have any real good, tangible work under his belt to be spoken of. He comes out with this book, and this because he's been able to entice Steve Bannon into having some excerpts in it. Somehow all of a sudden it's relevant. It's already been proven in the last couple of days, 99.99% just junk, which parallels the first dossier, right? So I jokingly said this. I'm like, I'm surprised the FBI hasn't taken this book taken this book down to the FISA courts, undressed, as is, presented it in front of the FISA courts and said, hey, we got more relevance here, panel on the FISA. We need, another warrant into this segment or this warrant for this segment. I mean, I don't know how all that works, but that's about as ridiculous as it sounds. About as ridiculous as the first one, right? So, Steve Bannon's been playing pedal back for the last 3 to 4 days. He's been like, distancing himself from Michael Wolff and Fire and Fury, stating that, Trump's a great guy. I'm still behind his agenda. Well, I'm sorry, Steve. I think 2 days ago, yesterday, day before, Breitbart let him go. I meant Breitbart and Steve Bannon, they're one. I don't know what he's going to do now, but it isn't with Breitbart. So, I mean, if he wanted to come out and make a name for himself, I think he's made a name for himself in the wrong way. So, good morning, Lauren. I appreciate you, sir. One of Truth Hour faithfuls here, joining us again. Appreciate you. So, you have the fact. There's a lot of culminating things coming out, right? And I didn't really know how to tie all this in together, so I'm just going to kind of go down the line. We'll bounce around, guys, but we'll come back to some of that later. But anyways, so Trump has his first cabinet meeting this week, 2 days ago, I believe. And in true Trump fashion, true Trump style, disregarding tradition, disregarding status quo, what's Trump do? Trump has an open-door meeting for about 45 minutes with the press available to scrutinize and look in on exactly what he's doing. I think it's awesome. I think it's phenomenal what he did. He continues, because here's the thing, it also then flies in the face of Fast and Furious. That's there's another gun-running thing that Fast and Furious was under the Obama administration, Eric Holder running guns across the deal, so I always have that on my mind. Fire and Fury, so by having this open-door meeting, right, his first cabinet meeting, has an open door for 45 minutes, press is in there, watching intently, watching and seeing exactly what's going to happen. Because what did Fire and Fury come out and state? Michael Wolff comes out and says, through inserts from Steve Bannon, that Trump's a blithering idiot. He doesn't know how to manage. He can't lead. He's not fit for the office of the United States presidency. Okay? So what's Trump do? He's like, all right, we'll counter that. We'll just have an open-door cabinet meeting. It was amazing. I don't know if you watched it. I watched every bit of it. They sit in on that, and here's the problem. The Democrats that came in and sat in on that roundtable meeting that was open to the public for millions of people to witness and see can no longer sit there and defend their position about how Trump is unfit to serve, unfit to lead this country, that doesn't know what he's talking about, that's illiterate on certain issues of politics. They have lost another ace in the hole. And Trump knew that was going to discredit them, and he knew that was going to also go to bat against discrediting this ridiculous hearsay book by Michael Wolff. And kudos to him for that. And it's not just me being biased saying that. I'm watching that, and I'm looking at a commander-in-chief that is cordial, respectful of the other political parties on the other side of the aisle. He is knowledgeable for the most part on the majority of what was being discussed, and the majority of what was being discussed was immigration. Immigration was front and center. DACA was brought up, chain migration, the lottery system, the border wall. All of those things were front and center. And you didn't see a hot-headed president that was basically shutting out the other side. You didn't see an ignorant president that didn't know his facts and know how to convey truth. But instead, you saw just the opposite. You saw a president that had good control of the room. He was very respectful and cordial. He gave due process and time to the other senators across the aisle, Dianne Feinstein being one, and we'll talk about her in a minute. So it's ridiculous. The left, the more that time goes on, the more people see just how amazing this president is. And the Democrats want to hold on to this ridiculous stuff about how he's just incompetent. They're losing their credibility by the day. That boat's taking on water every second, right? So we got a quick video here, and I find this very great to bring up. The Democrats on the left are great about when it's politically convenient, expeditious for them to pick up a political baton and carry it, champion it, they do so. And even if it seems like it's on the right side of principle, right? Well, believe it or not, and I'm fixing to show you a video, there's a video showing I believe, Barack Obama and a few other, Clinton and a couple of other excerpts. It's really short, but it basically shows the hypocrisy of the Democrats all the way back, 8 or 10 years ago up to present, where they're stating, the very same things that the GOP is touting about the necessity for immigration reform. They are now basically against the very thing that they used to be against, and it's only because Trump's pushing it. It's only because the GOP is picking it up. So we're going to take a quick look at this, and this is the hypocrisy of the left.
Tonight, I announce I will sign an executive order to deny federal contracts to businesses that hire illegal immigrants. Let me be very clear about this. We are still a nation of immigrants. We should be proud of it. We are also a nation of laws.
It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders. Yes, we need tougher border security and stronger enforcement measures. Yes, we need more resources for customs and border agents and more detention beds.
So, if you witnessed that, you got to see that. There's a lot more I've researched on that. I mean, you can go back and just fall over instance after instance after example of the Democrats that are champion at some point in the past when it was, like I said, politically expedient. It was a huge baton for them to pick up and to gain votes or gain relevance. The Democrats will always do that. But the thing to see through there is that's not the real true Democratic Party. That's not the true left. The true left despises immigration reform. They want to leave it as is or make it worse. They want to dissolve the borders, and it's for if they want all the DACA participants, 800,000 plus people that have came here. And let's be honest, not of their own fault. I mean, they were born here, came across with their parents, whatever the case may be. I mean, what do we got? 8, 10, 12 million actual illegal immigrants here. So you got 8, 10, 12 million actual illegal immigrants here. The other subcategory is DACA, the Dreamers. You got 800,000 plus of those, So they try to. It's really simple. Guys, generationally, this has been a stick in the mud, and no party's been able to handle it. The Democrats don't want to handle it. They just want to dissolve it and make it even worse. And then when the GOP gets into power, it's such a sensitive thing that they end up getting bullied by the DNC or by the Dems and not even trying to take it to task. Well, guess what? Trump ain't putting up with that. Guys, it's all about votes. It's all about the Democrats having that element of their base that is dependent upon them. Dependency and the Dems go hand in hand. They have to have a dependent underclass of the base to stay relevant because they refuse to embrace accountability, self-sufficiency, and other, capitalist, free market, free enterprise, free country, constitutional type principles. They refuse to embrace that. And they champion victimhood status. That is exactly what the left, the far left, and a lot of the Democratic Party has to do. They play and they cater to the victims of this country that President Trump and a lot of the GOP, the principles that stand behind conservative values, do not even give the light of day to. There are true victims in any situation. But there is also law. President Trump and this administration is for standing for current law, standing up for what is already on the books. There is no need to, like we went through this last week, there is absolutely no need to come in and undercut current federal and government law to support an underclass of illegal immigrants that have refused to obey those laws and have successfully entered this country. Just because you successfully enter a country whose laws say it's illegal to do so doesn't mean that all of a sudden the process is over. But the Democrats wanted that. Just like we discussed last week, California becoming its first sanctuary state. Refusing to acknowledge and refusing to obey federal law. There's something extremely troubling and scary about that, guys. I mean, that is a state all but going to war with the federal government and the laws of this country. And once again, showing the hypocrisy of the left there. I mean, they might actually get in there, and while the cameras are rolling, oh yeah, we're this and we're that and we're that and we're this, but you can guarantee that they didn't want to have anything to do. And here's the thing: they was trying to trip up Trump on these things because he's new at some of this. And you had I forget McCarthy, one of the other senators in the room. Congressman was coming in there, and he was trying to rein back in Trump because Dianne Feinstein tried to trip him into something like, well, can't we just agree to have a clean DACA bill and move forward? Well, she was trying to trying to put DACA alone outside of the immigration discussion and negotiation and have it just, like a bill on its own, not tied to something. And Trump, he's just, and a lot of the right's actually saying he sold out the other day because he was, trying to give away the ranch. Oh, yeah, we'll discuss this, we'll discuss that. No, it isn't. It's classic Trump. And he probably went above and beyond to be as respectful and as openly flexible in negotiating with the Dems in this situation because the cameras are rolling. But mark my word, he even stated after the fact, he's not going to give up the wall. Without a physical barrier on our southern border, you do not have true security. Now, I've always been a champion for discussing DACA. Guys, the Dreamers are here. We can discuss the illegals. We can discuss DACA. They're two different situations. Right? I've always said, I don't know how you get there, but I've always said, why not take away one of the Democrats' biggest playing cards, and that is this underclass victimhood status base. If President Trump and these GOP senators get together with the Democrats and they're able to be bipartisan and come up with something that keeps the Dreamers here, I'm going to tell you right now, it one-ups the Democrats. They lose a significant portion of their voter base because the Democrats won't be able to champion that no more. All these Dreamers are going to look at it and go, man, look at the bipartisanship. Look at what Trump did with his leadership to come up with something that allowed us to stay here legally. Now, I don't know how we get there. And principle tells me that just because 10 or 12 million people came illegally and then had kids or brought them with them, there is some responsibility for that underclass, the DACA, the Dreamers. But part of my principle says practicality. You can't go around and load up 800,000 plus people that were, it wasn't their fault they're here in the Dreamers, and you practically can't go around and load up 8, 10, 12, 14 million actual illegals, and a majority of which, guys, let's be honest, a majority of the illegals in this country, while they are, illegal, are there's a majority of them. There's just a certain percentage that are actually, felons and committing crimes. Definitely get rid of them. So I don't know practically how you get there, but we can't deport 12 million people, guys. It ain't feasible. It ain't going to work. And Trump's great at looking at that and going, okay, I want the wall. We want to end chain migration in this stupid lottery system where, oh, congratulations, so-and-so. You won the lottery, and guess what? Because of the lottery, you get to also qualify for chain migration. You're the next contestant on the border is right? So chain migration says this. You won the lottery, you're a single person. You might have 30 other individual family members. Guess what? They're automatically considered to be immigrants then. And they're brought in with the person that won the lottery. That has to end. That has to end now. It's dangerous. There's very little to no vetting for that process. And a lot of situations across the country and overseas, look no further than Europe, guys. Look no further than Europe. Look at the atrocities that they're having because they had open borders when the Syrian refugees started pouring in. It's horrible. It's horrible. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on there. And I'm going to skip over something real fast. I'm going to come back. I'm sure y'all have heard about Oprah Winfrey. She was on the Golden Globe Awards or whatever that was. I don't even know. I don't watch that stuff. It's ridiculous. It's vanity. It's self-righteousness. It's I'm better than you, and I make millions of dollars, and whatever. I could deal without that. I just feed me a bunch of truth, principle, and fact, and I'm happy all day long. So anyways, Oprah's out there, and she's making some statements, and there's been some things. And guys, this is going to, I guess we won't skip it. I'm going to go ahead and hit this. Oprah Winfrey is supposedly touted to be running for president in 2020. I don't know how much relevance there is to that. It's been thrown out there. She's on tape in the past number of years stating that she would absolutely never even consider it. Huge following, you know. I used to be an Oprah Winfrey fan when I was really young, until I grew up and got a head on my shoulders and figured out what was right and what was wrong. You know, and kudos to her for being a great American success story, right? She came from nothing. Made her name, made millions. That's great, but there's more to this country than money. There's principle and there's truth. There's ethics. There's the Constitution. So I did a little digging. Had some friends on Facebook sharing some stuff as well, and just found some things that if she ends up throwing her hat into the ring to be considered as a presidential candidate, she's going to have some things to answer to and to acknowledge and to get over before she could even get there. But one of them is her question on faith, right? So we've got a video put up here. I think I've got the right video up. Yep, question on faith, guys. I believe this is back one of her shows on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And, you know, there's only one way to the Father. And that's through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, His Son. Came to this earth, died on a cruel cross, shed His blood for our sins. Period. End of sentence. It's in Scripture. There's no further way to try to vet that. That's the way that happened. That's the way that is. And that's the truth. Well, during one of Oprah's episodes a number of years back, I don't know if it was in the 80s, early 90s, I'm not certain, they apparently had a faith discussion episode, and this is pretty telling. We'll go ahead and listen to that.
The panel has been discussing the spirituality and the forces of God, but I also believe that there are two forces that are here with us, that we do have our God that we can depend on, but there's also a power of darkness that we do need to be aware of. And that's where the choices begin.
Do you believe that you can choose between one or the other?
Most absolute, definitely.
Yeah.
We have given that
Now,
choice.
Marianne Williamson says in her book, Return to Love, that we're always walking in the direction of one or the other, that all of your actions in life, either you're moving toward the darkness or you're moving toward the light.
That's right.
She calls it fear and love. There's this wonderful book called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, which is, anyway, it's a gorilla talking, but anyway, it talks about, one of the points it brings out is one of the mistakes that human beings make is believing that there is only one way to live, and
right.
that we don't accept that there are diverse ways of being in the world, that there are millions of ways to be a
Then
human
how do we
being,
please
and,
God?
and many ways, many paths to what you call God.
That
and
is
her path
pleasing.
might be something else, and when she gets there, she might call it the light. But her loving and her kindness and her generosity if it brings her to the same point that it brings you, it doesn't matter whether she called it God along the way or not.
And I guess the danger that could be on that, I mean, it sounds great on the onset, but if you really look at both sides,
There
could be a
couldn't
person.
possibly be just one way. What about Jesus? What about Jesus?
You say there isn't only one way. There is one way and only one way, and that is through Jesus.
There couldn't possibly be with the
Because
millions
you
of people
say
in the
there
world.
isn't.
There couldn't possibly be.
Because you intellectualize it and say there isn't. If you don't believe that, you're all buying into the lie.
Do you think that if you are somewhere on the planet, if you're somewhere on the planet and you never hear the name of Jesus, but yet you live with a loving heart, you lived as Jesus would have had you to live, you lived for the same purpose that Jesus came to the planet to teach us all, but you are in some remote part of the earth and you never heard the name of Jesus, you cannot get to heaven, you think?
And that is covered in the scriptures, too. People are talked about
Truly, God knows the
Does
heart.
God care about your heart, or God care about if you call His Son Jesus?
Well, you know, Oprah, Jesus cannot come back until that gospel is preached in the four corners of this earth. So, figure it out.
Okay, I can't get into a religious argument with you.
It's not religion.
All right, guys. Yeah, so there you have it. I mean, and I'm not saying that people don't have time to change their views and their policies, but there's one example of her questioning faith, questioning Jesus Christ as the only way, the truth, and the light. It's I mean, there she is on national television, multi-million people audience, going to bat against some of those people in that audience, stating that there's millions of ways to what you call God. No, there's not what you call God and what I call God. There is God, one Father, one Son, Jesus Christ, came to this earth, walked amongst sinful man, died a cruel death on a cross, shed his blood, embodied all of humanity's sin, and saved each and every one of us that will acknowledge that and be baptized and saved. Period. End of sentence. And for Oprah to get on there and basically state, that I've read this book and this guy said this and this guy said that, and you can't say there's one way. There's no possibility that there's one way, and it was priceless. That lady had the courage to stand up and say, there is only one way, and it's Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, right? John 14:6, guys. Look it up, read it. Look it up and read it. So, and here's another video, guys. This one's pretty dramatic. Now, it might be taken a little bit out of context. I don't want to, I'm not going to totally drop the hammer on her here. I'm not exactly certain, but what appears to me is the culmination of a Politics Nation, looks like with BBC. I'm not certain of the time or date. She's doing an interview with a gentleman, and they're talking about racism and those type situations in America, and this is her response.
As long as people can be judged by the color of their skin, the problem's not solved. There are still generations of people, older people, who were born and bred and marinated in it, in that prejudice and racism, and they just have to die.
Wow. Like I said, I don't know the full context of that, but I don't think you have to have a whole lot of context behind what she finished up that statement with. I mean, there's not a lot of context. I mean, you can't crutch on context and say, well, it was context, it was this or that, it was taken out of context. I mean, Oprah Winfrey's on record right there in an interview about racism and about the effects and the residual, generational effects of racism, and she's basically stating that the people that have, and there are individuals. Racism is systemic occasionally through generational passing, and if we're not born to hate, we learn how to hate as a race. It's a learned trait. Hatred is. But here she is. I mean, where's her grace at? Once again, well, she believes there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 ways to Christ or to God. But here she is. She's wrong. And that's very divisive for a black woman to be saying that has, embraced the capitalist system in this country, came from nothing. What a true, amazing story she really is. But to be on, and I can't state that I've walked a mile in her shoes, and I'm not going to say I have. But to have that kind of underlying foundational tone or belief system is scary. We had elements of that in Barack Obama. He wouldn't say it. He wouldn't come out and you know what? It's a great point. At least Oprah Winfrey, if that is her true beliefs, and I personally hope she doesn't feel that way now, but if that's her core beliefs, kudos for that woman for standing on what she believes. You know what? That's worth 1,000,000 times more than somebody that will believe one way and yet portray it another, right? To one person, they're this way, the other one, they're that. But she would have to answer questions for that, that everybody, basically whoever's been in that's, the generational cesspool of racism, and those white people just need to die. I don't know of a harsher statement. So, guys, the Democrats are desperate. The desperate Democrats, the DDs, the desperate Democrats are desperate for someone, anyone they can get behind that they think can have a chance to run against Donald Trump in 2020. Guys, we go back a number of weeks ago. I'm a big Rush Limbaugh fan. He was on record stating that there was a lot of things happening they were clearing, the DNC was clearing the path of the Clintons, making certain that that was kind of put to bed and that the Clintons would never raise their head again in politics and that they wouldn't be in the way. Rush Limbaugh actually thought, and there might be some relevance there. I'm not saying he's wrong at all. He's always right most of the time. But I think it's almost like the Democrats are like, they're doing like a test phase. They roll somebody out, they see what's going to happen, and then, well, they don't put all their weight behind that person. So Rush's theory, and I actually bought into that. I think that there was a chance there at one point there that this was before all this started coming out about how corrupt the Obama administration was, and every day it's just getting worse. But before all this was coming out, I really do think they were clearing the pathway for Michelle Obama. I believe they were trying to roll her out. I believe that she was going to be the first woman president, that they thought that they could actually get elected. And, who's not to like for Michelle Obama? And she had the best of both worlds is the way they looked at it. She could tie into what the Obama legacy was, the good parts that were acceptable, and she could then distance herself from some of the bad. The bad part about it is it's gotten so bad in the last 2 or 3 weeks or a month or longer with this dossier stuff, the spying on the Trump campaign, the collusion. You tie all of this in, and guess what? Even Barack Obama's wife isn't going to be able to be free from the kryptonite that is the corruption that has been shown in the Obama administration. And so you don't hear about that anymore. You don't hear anything. I mean, there were some like little flirts and little hints, and you could just listen real close. You'd be like, yeah, Michelle Obama might be. Oh, really? Well, you don't hear that no more. In fact, I don't even really think it got traction or got off the ground. And I'm going to tell you why. They knew it was an instant deal breaker because they see the writing on the wall. They see the truth coming down the train tracks, and this is getting worse every day for the Obamas. It's an atrocity for them. They couldn't, if they ran Michelle Obama as their front runner, no way. Absolutely no way. And I'm sorry, but if this is their next best bet, Donald Trump's going to sweep the floor. He's going to sweep the floor. I mean, guys, you got the biggest tax cut in history. You got more people with more money in their pockets. You wait till this time next year. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. If you got a bigger paycheck every month, you're not going to be doing much hating on the president. The mainstream media and then on all this trying to do the collusion and he's not fit, all this stuff is being dismantled by the day. It's shown to be an irrelevant topic. And so all these hardcore no-Trumpers, never-Trumpers on the right and all these anti-Trumpers on the left, I'm telling you what, those are dissolving by the day. The anti-Trumpers on the left are they're going to eventually, there's going to be an element of those just go down with the ship. Once you're that hateful and demeaning, you're going to buy into that and you're going to latch onto that and you'll ride it down to the bottom of the, ocean. You'll go down with it. But there are going to be an element of people that have some common sense, guys, that will see the truth, see where the mainstream media has been and what they've been lied to about. And they're going to release themselves from all that. And they're going to start embracing truth. And all we don't even need that. They could all the left and all the Dems could actually stay believing what they believe and doing what they want and voting what they want to vote. And Donald Trump's still going to clean house in 2020. But I'm simply saying it ain't going to be close. One, they don't have anybody. They don't have a front runner. They don't have anybody with any principle or truth. The Dems don't have a message. The message that they got is they're anti-Trump on everything. Not a single Democrat voted for that tax cut. Not a single Democrat voted for you to have an extra dime in your paycheck. That's all you should know. If they won't go to bat to help put money back in your pocket that's rightfully yours to begin with, they don't deserve your vote. So, period, end of sentence. Speaking of Obama, it's been brought to light that in the last, I think this was late last week, maybe early this week, if you kept up with Benghazi, guys, that almost got blown under the rug, right? And I've always still had questions about that. They covered that up. It was a video, it was a demonstration on the, basically on the footsteps of the, Romney, Obama campaigns there for Obama's second term for that election. And oh man, we can't be having a terrorist attack anywhere in the world. We're going to have to call it something else. I can't believe anybody'd call it Benghazi's attack. We lost Christopher Stevens, I believe Stevens, and like 2 or 3 contractors, of which were Navy SEALs, privately hired ex-Navy SEALs. They, Clinton was the, head of all of that. Didn't do her job. They left Benghazi out there to flop in the wind, and all of a sudden they had an orchestrated attack, a coordinated attack against the embassy and the consulate there, killed Ambassador Stevens and a number of other people. They had assets within reach that could have been there within a matter of minutes or a couple of hours. Instead, they let an attack go on for hours and kill our ambassador, and then they basically swept it under the rug as some kind of stupid demonstration. It's an absolute joke. But I always knew there was more there. There had to be more of a reason, and it wasn't just because it was on the precipice of the election, and Obama didn't want there to have his beautiful plan of I've been taking care of the apology tour and bow to everybody has succeeded, and nobody's going to attack us. He can't have an attack on the basically the night before the election, right? So they pull a bunch of falsehoods and a bunch of junk to the American people and lie. But I knew there was something more. And it's come to find out that the Obama administration was running guns to Syria. Now, why is that significant? Running guns to Syria through Libya, through Benghazi. You remember the red line. Assad basically comes out. He makes a Obama, he sees all these atrocities. They'd been going on anyways. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people had already been butchered and massacred in any number of ways. And because of political pressure, not because he's standing on his convictions and his principle, Obama comes out and draws a proverbial red line, says if they ever use gas or do any of this, or this, we're going to do something. Assad gasses a bunch of people. Obama looks the other way. And that would initiate the largest mass exodus since World War II. Millions of Syrians had nowhere to go. Nobody over there would step in and defend their country. And in step Russia, in step all these other bad actors, in step ISIS, and you have millions of refugees that didn't want to have nothing to do with that war, that just wanted to live in their own country, and nobody, no free sovereign nation around this globe would step up for them, including the United States of America, and that makes me sick to my stomach. He stood by and let hundreds of thousands of people be butchered and be slaughtered, and he also preempted the largest mass exodus, mass migration since World War II. These people had nowhere to go, and if this man and this administration would have stepped in the void, stood up for what's right, when he put down a red line, defended it, done something righteous for once. Instead, he didn't do that. So he did the next best thing, apparently. He covertly was allowing guns to be ran. Well, that's great to the opposition and some of the Assad regime. That's great. Because he knew the kickback would have been, well, we can't go to conflict because my base doesn't want me to do that. So how about we secretly and hush-hush run a bunch of guns through Benghazi, Libya, up to Syria so that so the rebels can fight Assad. What a joke. While he still sat back, okay, you're going to hand them a bunch of guns, but you're not going to be there in person and in principle. So we still let thousands of people die. Thousands, right? So here's a little video with Martha MacCallum on Fox. We won't listen to all of it. I think it's pretty long, but you'll get the gist of it.
In other breaking news this morning on Benghazi now, in this Fox News exclusive, because documents are now revealing that U.S. intelligence agencies were fully aware that weapons were moving from the terror stronghold in Libya to Syria before the attack that killed the 4 Americans that you see at the center of our screen. The paper trail also contradicts President Obama's assertion that the rise of ISIS came as somewhat of a surprise to the administration. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on this for us live in D.C. So, Catherine, what are we learning here about this?
Well, Martha, newly released documents show a serious disconnect between what the administration said and what was known as the Defense Intelligence Agency, also known as the DIA. This September 16, 2012 memo, copied to the National Security Council, State Department, CIA, and others, concluded the Benghazi terrorist attack was planned at least 10 or more days in advance. The DIA memo also reports the attack was tied to 9/11 and was retaliation for a June 2012 drone strike that killed an al-Qaeda strategist. There is no discussion of a demonstration or an anti-Islam video. Quote, the intention was to attack the consulate and to kill as many Americans as possible, to seek revenge for the U.S. killing of Abu Yahya al-Libi in Pakistan, and in memorial of the 11 September 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center buildings. Judicial Watch obtained these new records by suing in federal court.
The Obama administration says it was a coincidence that it occurred on 9/11. In fact, their intelligence said it wasn't a coincidence, and in fact, specifically, the attack occurred because it was 9/11.
And another DIA memo from 2012 predicts the rise of ISIS and the establishment of a caliphate 17 months before the president called the terror group the JV Team, Martha.
There's been a lot of discussion about what our operatives were doing there at the time when this attack happened, and that there was discussion about moving weapons out of that very volatile area in Libya. What do we learn about that in here, Catherine?
Well, Martha, another DIA memo dated October 5th, 2012, leaves no doubt that U.S. intelligence agencies were clearly aware that lethal weapons were being shipped to Syria via the port of Benghazi. In a recent interview with Bret Baier, the former acting CIA director skirted the topic.
Were CIA officers tracking the movement of weapons from Libya to Syria?
Can't talk about that.
Can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it.
Even if they weren't moving the weapons themselves, are you saying categorically that the U.S. government and the CIA played no role whatsoever in the movement of weapons from Libya to Syria?
Yes, we played no role. Now, whether we were watching other people do it, I can't talk about.
The DIA memo also reported that military stockpiles were moving from Benghazi to the Syrian ports of Banias and Bor Islam, and the shipments included rifles, RPGs, and missiles. This DIA document may also be problematic for Mrs. Clinton, who also skirted the weapons issue during her only congressional testimony on Benghazi of January 2013, Martha.
Yeah, we remember that interesting exchange. Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Wow.
So you are pro-life, I'm pro-choice. I would describe...
If y'all watch that, I've been thinking that for years. I'm also a fan of Glenn Beck. I watched... listen to Glenn Beck's radio program, watch his show occasionally, and way back I was even big fan of Beck. He's a little out there on a few things, but he was spot on this. And when he first said that, I was like, what? I was taken back. He's right on. And that gentleman there interviewing with Bret Baier, I have my doubts. I have my serious doubts that not only did the United States know that weapons were being ran to the opposition there in Syria against the Assad regime, but I'm going to go out on a limb and state that I think, and time will probably prove this, that there was a coordinated effort with the Obama administration to make certain that that was happening. So, I mean, either way, if you're complicit and you're an enabler, you're just as big a participant as the person that's committing it. I mean, and that's the way I look at it. So even if they were looking at another country or another faction or heck, who knows, another terrorist organization, I wouldn't put it past Obama. It was just uncovered a couple of weeks ago, they were turning a blind eye to Hezbollah to run drugs through the Mexican cartels up into our borders and into our country so that they could appease the Ayatollahs and the higher-ups there with Iran so that they could then further foster a relationship to push the Iran nuclear deal. If our president would turn a blind eye to allow poison to be pumped across our borders to get into our youth and our adults, all to champion the worst deal in United States history and probably the world's history, to give the world's biggest sponsor of terrorism a pathway to a nuclear bomb, if he'll do that, why wouldn't he run a few guns? That's child's play. Let's run a few guns up to the Syrian, rebels. That way, I can't really help you guys. I know I gave you a red line, but I'm not going to defend that. Too much political hot water. You guys take care. We'll see you later. Best of luck. God bless. Right? What a joke. What a joke, guys. We got about 10 or 12 minutes. I'm going to dive into the meat and potatoes, really what I've been wanting to get to. Had a lot of other stuff, so wanted to get to that. So if you're on here, guys, I appreciate you. Please give me a shout out on the chat bar there so I can acknowledge who you are. I do appreciate your attendance, guys. You are the reason I do this. Last but not least, fresh off the press from the Hannity show last night, he sat down had a segment with Jim Jordan, Congressman Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, and Circa News reporter Sarah Carter. Been watching her for a good while as well. Jim Jordan's a fireplug. He's awesome, man, on those hearings and stuff. He takes it to the people that are in the seats. He talks fast. He talks poignant, to the point, and he is direct. and I love him, man. He's great. So anyways, on Handy last night, it's been confirmed, and it's going to be unraveling, guys, as the hours and days come out. So, I'll bring that to you in next week's segment. Be ready for that. The big question's always been, to what extent did the fake Russian dossier paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign, dressed up by the FBI, and now confirmed to have been dressed up by the FBI and presented? It had to be dressed up. Why you know that, Shane? Because guess what? It's been confirmed that it by itself or in part with a number of other supposed documentation was submitted to the FISA courts to obtain a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign and his family and anybody to do with Trump as it related to supposed Russian-Trump collusion. Why is that troubling? It's troubling on so many fronts, guys. If opposition research paid for, money laundered through different companies from the DNC, from the Clintons, into Fusion GPS that paid Christopher Steele, that was a MI6 agent, an undercover guy that had connections to tentacles in Russia, to basically, guys, they cherry-picked absolute ridiculous false stuff out of thin air. The only thing that's been confirmed 100% at the time, when this FISA court warrant was issued, this is shocking. Sarah Carter states, the only thing at the time that that this document was dressed up and submitted to the FISA courts for a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign, at that specific moment, the only thing that the FBI knew that had been vetted and proven was that Carter Page had made a trip to Russia. What? That means that everything else in that dossier that's since been proven, a majority of which has been proven salacious and false and lies and hearsay. I mean, stuff I can't even say on the air to discredit President Trump, just to make him look like a blooming idiot. Everything else was just that, a lie, unvetted, unproven junk that was dressed up and put in there on the back of one fact. Carter Page, one of his early on guys that was in the administration, I don't exactly know what his title was, he made a trip to Russia at some point. What does that prove? It doesn't prove anything. So the FBI has all of this junk put together with one relevant fact, and supposedly it's got merit. So let's fast forward to yesterday, guys. Yesterday was the day after Trump had his cabinet meeting. All this coming together, all this bipartisanship, everybody looks like they're going to get along. Dianne Feinstein's having a cordial conversation with President Trump about immigration. And the next day, Dianne Feinstein releases the transcript that at that point, up until that point, had been private, between when they brought in, I'm trying to think of his name, but the co-founder of Fusion GPS. He was brought in and interviewed behind closed doors, had a closed-door session. There was speculation about what was in that, those interviews and those questions and answers and all that, and as to what he revealed or didn't reveal. Well, Feinstein just up and goes around Chuck Grassley, her other counterpart on the GOP side, and releases this transcript. And she champions that release behind one thing. She says that is going to be, that was released because she thought that the American people deserved to know what the transcript was. Okay, that sounds great. But that's not the reason she released that transcript. The reason she released that transcript is because within the transcript, now they're touting, because the drumbeat's getting louder and heavier and faster about the fact, and now we do know that the fact is that the dossier was front and center, if not all of the reason. It was a significant reason for the FISA warrant. In the transcript, apparently, the gentleman, the co-founder of Fusion GPS, was stating that that the dossier was also in collaboration with another source inside the Trump campaign, is why that had so much relevance and why they got the FISA warrant. Well, come to find out, the insider in the Trump campaign was none other than, he wasn't an insider at all. It was Papadopoulos. who's already pled to lying to the FBI. And guess what? He was caught in London having drinks with somebody that he told that he thought, apparently this is the story, can't believe anything until you know, and I don't believe any of this, but this is what's being stated, that he told this individual over drinks in London, that they had dirt, that Russia had dirt on Hillary or Trump or one version of that. You mean to tell me that they initiated an investigation, they doctored up a document and had that as corroborating evidence to go get a FISA warrant to spy on our president? None of that makes any sense. So why would Dianne Feinstein preemptively send this out the day after a bipartisan meeting and a cabinet meeting that was so promising and positive? And then guess what? She releases that has no relevance, and then now we know for sure that the dossier was front and center in the FISA warrant process. It's just unbelievable, guys, that this would happen. I mean, I'm absolutely shocked. We are living in a country that champions itself of freedom and democracy and a constitutional republic. And what we basically have is a banana republic until Trump got in there and he's cleaning house. But under the Obama administration, it wasn't business as usual. Guys, we can list instance after instance where the government was weaponized against conservatives and the American people. Lois Lerner, the IRS scandal. If you're a conservative, right-leaning, had a Tea Party type activist, you were scrutinized. You weren't given permits to have certain tax statuses, which prevented your organization from getting off the ground, which prevented you from getting your word out, which prevented extra votes for Romney, which prevented this country from having another 4 years of what would be Obama again. You have so many situations where, and now you have the DOJ under Obama, the Uranium One, you have all of this stuff, the Trump dossier, you have all of this government oversight and all of these government agencies that are supposed to be in place to be non-biased and protect the average day American that have been weaponized against those very people. It's a scary day in this country. Thank the good Lord that Trump's in office. Thank the good Lord that Hillary Clinton did not get elected. Or this stuff would have been buried forever. Thank the good Lord for Mr. Fitton with Judicial Watch that goes after Freedom of Information suits and gets stuff because the government will not release them. It's a sad day in this country where you got to go sue to get stuff that's public record. What a joke. Thank goodness for Sarah Carter, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, all these individuals going to bat for this. Peter Schweitzer, right? Wrote that book. Clinton Cash. All these things are coming light, guys. 2018 is going to be epic. Stay in touch. Stay plugged in. I will bring you more relevance. We are out of time. It's been another action-packed hour here, guys. Thank you very much for being on here today. Shout out real quick and let me know you're here. I will thank each and every one of you individually, but if you don't, I'll thank you anyways. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. Once again, you can find us Truth Hour Radio on YouTube. You can email me at truthourradio@gmail.com with any comments or questions. You can also leave them here on the chat bar. All of those videos from prior weeks are listed there on YouTube. Just search that. I don't have anything else, guys. What a blazing session this was. Had a lot of stuff going through, so I appreciate your attendance. I hope everybody has a great week. Aaron, thank you, sir, for being on. You and Lauren are some of my faithfuls, my Truth Hour faithfuls. They put up with me week in and week out. Guys, spread the word. I appreciate you. We need you. Trying to grow this audience, trying to get the word out, the truth out, spread Christianity, spread God's word, spread truth, principle, and ethics and morals. We do appreciate you. Hope you have a blessed week. Stay warm. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.